Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming. My name's Monty Belmonte. I'm a radio host at 93.9 The River and WHMP in Northampton, Massachusetts, and I'm honored and humbled to have been asked to participate in this today. We all, as a nation and as a globe, have experienced a corporate trauma in regards to COVID-19 and this pandemic, and so many of you here today have experienced that trauma in a pronounced way. So this is really a first step for us to gather together as a community and grieve together. It's an important first step, and you'll hear more about some of the work that these wonderful people have been doing to continue to remember those who have been lost. I will likely wear my mask and sunglasses the whole time so that if I begin to weep uncontrollably, I won't look ridiculous in the newspaper. A couple of housekeeping issues. Make sure to turn off your cell phones. There is a porta potty out by the parking lot. It's got a picture of a husky on it. You do not have to use it in the same manner a husky would. I'd also like to acknowledge the legislators who are here today, some of whom will be reading these micro obituaries. But we have Representative Paul Mark, Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, Senator Adam Hines, and two of the representatives who will be reading these obituaries with me as well, Representative Natalie Blais and Representative Mindy Dom. I also want to point out at any point you feel overwhelmed during this ceremony that there is a licensed social worker named Jessica Cutter who is over here. If you need to excuse yourself, she's here holding space for anyone who may feel overwhelmed by their grief, and she is there available to offer support if you need it. And of course, I want to acknowledge all of the people here who have lost loved ones to COVID. I think there are few and far between of us who haven't known somebody who has been lost to COVID, some of us with someone so close in their family, and I can't imagine what you're going through, but I am glad to be here to support you. I'm also honored to have been asked to be here by the organizer of today's event and the COVID justice leader of the state of Massachusetts with the organization Marked by COVID, which is a national nonprofit, nonpartisan community of COVID bereaved volunteers dedicated to remembrance, accountability, and a pandemic-free future. Joining her will be other members of Marked by COVID, but let me first introduce Jennifer Ritz-Sullivan, as well as Kristin Urquiza, who is a co-founder of Marked by COVID, who lost her dad, Mark, as well as COVID activist Tara of Arizona, who lost her dad, Charles, Fiona of New Jersey, who lost her mom, Isabel, and Marcy and her daughter, Jacqueline, who lost their husband and father, Keith. They could all come forward.
I probably shouldn't touch this as I am not a professional speaker, but I just did. So, hello everyone. I thank you for coming here today. I want to first acknowledge the COVID bereaved community. These people beside me and throughout the audience are my siblings in grief. I see you. Our loved ones deserve more, and we deserve more. We couldn't be here today without Richard Richardson, creator of Three Sisters Sanctuary, and event intern Becca. As some of you know, this event was initially planned for last year, but postponed with the rise of the Delta variant. Since then, Richard lost his mother to COVID-19. We appreciate him for seeing the necessity of this event before becoming a member of the COVID community. Much gratitude to Monty and Representatives Blais and Dome today for taking the time to honor our loved ones. Thank you to the volunteers, especially this man Dave running sound, and his wife Kaylee with the hospitality table. All of them are helping this event run smoothly. And lastly, thank you to the community members in attendance and the legislators for holding space, bearing witness, and mourning these collective losses. Now the hard part. I began volunteering with Marked by COVID shortly after losing my mom, early dawn, to COVID-19. She, like many of our loved ones, suffered while isolated in a hospital ICU for 2.5 weeks, slowly suffocating to death. Hospital staff were overwhelmed and the updates were few. I could only have one brief phone call with my mom before she died alone. While the world debated the cause of her death and pushed for a return to normalcy, even as mass death and disability surrounded us, and I should remind you that it still surrounds us, I was separated from my family. We couldn't hold a proper service. We had to suppress our grief. My trauma's not unique. My mom was one of over 77,000 people to die in the month of December of 2020 in the US of COVID. And today, over 1,044,000 people in the US have died. Today, globally, the number is 6.5 million. These are the officially counted deaths. We know that the true extent of losses is far greater. These losses, like many preventable heartbreaks in the United States, were and continue to be the result of policy choices. So today, folks, we're in the hill towns of Western Massachusetts. It's a predominantly white area of the country. But I need you to remember that this pandemic disproportionately impacts Indigenous, Black, Brown, low-income, and disabled communities due to the ongoing structural racism, classism, and ableism embedded in our country. As our community is still growing unnecessarily, we look to you, our legislators, to help our forgotten families still struggling from the horrific losses and numerous impacts of the pandemic. We look to you to help stop this pandemic and prevent the next one. In closing, I can't help but think as we gather here today, tomorrow marks the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which claimed the lives of just under 3,000 people on the day, and countless others in the unjust war that followed. Almost immediately after the towers collapsed, we declared 9/11 a tragedy that our nation vowed never to forget. We took the time to recognize and grieve that loss collectively. It's hard to stand here so close to that anniversary and not think about the catastrophic and historical losses of the pandemic. A 9/11 every day, as some reporters called it during its peak. I have to tell you folks, it's still a 9/11 every week. We lost 2,618 people last week in the United States, 73 in Massachusetts. It seems still that so many people are failing to acknowledge the scope of this loss in the first place. So I want to remind you, we can't prevent what we are not willing to acknowledge. Thank you for recognizing and honoring these losses with me today.
Thank you, Jen. Before I introduce the legislators who will be helping to read these micro obituaries that Jennifer compiled, I did want to also acknowledge Kristin Ellico and Zing from Senator Ed Markey's office, who are here today as well. If I could please call up Representative Mindy Dahm and Representative Natalie Blais to assist me in reading these. We gather to share the pain of these collective losses. We stand beside the COVID-bereaved community in solidarity and give you the space to mourn that you all deserve without judgment. We will not turn away. We will bear witness and hold space to the immeasurable pain you continue to experience. We gather to give the gift of grieving to the community during this time of the pandemic. We honor the lives lost in Massachusetts, throughout the world, and all of us still here together. Anthony Tony McDonald shared his love of music by playing in many brass groups, ensembles, orchestras, and his band, Dr. Tony's Original Ragtime Band. He was a talented conductor and published a book on Black composers. Tony had a huge personality. He was full of exuberance for life and is dearly missed by his family and everyone who knew him.
William R. Aldrich grew up in Vermont on a farm. Accounting was his work life, but he also loved kicking back at the beach. The family was so important to him, including his wife, Rena, of 53 years. William enjoyed genealogy and did lots of research on his family. The world is missing a kind man.
Keith Jacobs was a photographer who loved making memories out of images. He would often tell people, "Have a picture-perfect day." He worked while he was on dialysis for 4 years. He finally reached the top of the list and was cleared in March 2020, but died in April. He never complained as he waited. He loved his roles of husband, father, and grandfather. He loved his family and life.
Elaine Fanning was a beloved mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, talented watercolor painter, avid reader, and follower of current events. She was lonely at the end of her days. The pandemic was especially hard because of the isolation for her and others in her nursing facility. Elaine is missed and loved by her family.
Ruth Audrey Fullen spent her entire life in joyful service to others. A longtime resident of Weymouth, she devoted herself to raising her family of 4 children, always opening her home to the neighborhood children and her children's school friends. She worked as a lab technician until the age of 80. For over 25 years, she delivered weekly food for the Weymouth Food Pantry. And once a month for decades, Ruth helped to cook and serve meals for the homeless in Boston and Quincy.
Bernie Rubin founded the wildly successful Bernie and Phil's furniture stores with his wife of 61 years, Phyllis. He was very philanthropic, and he gave to many groups that were special in his heart, including the MS Society and Home for Little Wanderers. He was a big personality and could be found cracking jokes. Bernie was charming and a trustworthy caregiver. His family feels robbed by his loss.
Urla Dawn Dimitriadis was a mom, wife, and grandmother. She did not have the opportunity to graduate from high school, but she persevered against all odds and earned not only a bachelor's degree, but also a master's degree in psychology as an adult. Urla was a gifted artist with an unending stream of creativity, which she happily shared with the world. She worked for over 25 years with the Stamford Public Schools. Urla's passion for her life's work undoubtedly impacted the lives of many children in Stamford over the years.
Frances Borden Hubbard was a brilliant African-American public health activist who worked for social justice throughout her life. She worked as a public health official for the city of Springfield, Massachusetts, at one point serving as its HIV/AIDS director in the 1990s. She spent more than 20 years improving the health of Springfield residents, especially adolescents, as a part of the Springfield Adolescent Health Program.
Frederick Harris grew up in Amherst and later moved to Northampton. He was scouted by the Red Sox in 1968, but was drafted to Vietnam in 1969. He proudly served his country for 2 years in the Army. He was married to his wife Judy for 49 years. Fred worked at the UMass power plant for many years, became the mail guy around campus, and drove the shuttle around, making new friends along the way.
Harvey Fetterman graduated from Boston College and worked in Massachusetts as a successful businessman in the printing industry for over 30 years. He was a man's man, intelligent, generous, and handsome. Harvey retired with his wife of 36 years, Carol, to Colorado to follow their love of skiing. He's missed deeply by his family, including his wife, 2 children, and grandson.
Sharon Spann Allen was an avid quilter and crafter. She shared her warm, whole heart with everyone. She left so many unfinished quilts. She made the world a better place.
Richard Scortino served his country as a lieutenant in the 1st Air Cavalry Division during the Vietnam War. Richard's quick wit, willingness to help others, and natural interest in conversing with people earned him a vast circle of valued friends. Richard enjoyed success as a business administrator for the Berkshire Hills Regional School District and later for the Hamden-Wilbraham Regional School District. His best friend, however, was his wife of 50 years, Margaret Holly, whom he met one fateful evening at the Ivanhoe Restaurant in West Springfield in the spring of 1969.
Margaret Holly Scortino arrived on Christmas Day in 1945 and grew up in Springfield. She was a doting mother to her 2 children and her husband, Richard. Holly returned to work as her children reached adolescence. She eventually spent many years as a teacher's aide in the horticulture program at the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative Trade High School. Holly proved herself a worthy educator who was equally adept at replacing spark plugs and chainsaws as she was providing a shoulder to cry on for her students.
Francis Vicholi Sr. of Onset worked for Cambridge Packaging Company as a controller for over 20 years before retiring in 2015. He was an avid bike rider. He rode for the Memory Ride for almost 20 years, raising money for Alzheimer's research. Frank retired at 70 and had just begun to travel and enjoy life.
Cassidy Patrice Baraka, 7 years old, of Groton, was an avid dancer, gymnast, Girl Scout, and all-around artistic child. She colored and drew rainbows daily and loved to make pictures for people to thank them or to brighten their day. She was very inquisitive and intelligent, with just the right amount of sass. She loved her mother very much. The pair did everything together, including attending over 100 Bruins games since her birth and multiple trips to Disney World.
Michael Conniff was a proud U.S. Navy veteran who served for 20 years and spent time in Desert Storm and Beirut. He later went on to work with autistic adults. Michael loved animals and adopted 2 dogs. He died from COVID on April 19, 2021, after being on a ventilator for 24 days. His sister Kim says he was alone when he died, and that destroyed me. I miss him so much.
Bob Gray was a dad, a grandfather. He loved his family and enjoyed being part of their lives. Bob is missed every day.
Philip W. Boyso of Southampton was an avid outdoorsman with a true passion for spending his time in the woods. Besides hunting, Phil loved fishing, truck pulling, demo derby, and tinkering on vehicles in the horse barn. Phil was a hard worker and proud of his business, country seal coating. All his family and friends miss him. His parents, wife, 3 young children, and quite possibly his best friend, his chocolate lab, Duke.
Louis Noel Courtois. Before his retirement, Louis worked most of his life at Joan Fabrics as a machine operator. Following his retirement, he worked and volunteered at the Lowell Senior Center, where he would help with maintenance and visit seniors when they could not get to the center. Louis enjoyed fishing, hunting, collecting memorabilia of Lowell, and listening to oldies music.
Alexandra Sandy Kolonskai was kind and generous and loved Bob Dylan almost as much as she loved her friends and family. She loved nature and the Jersey Shore. She was a gifted writer and loved poetry. Mostly, she tried to help others in need and was always looking out for and supporting all those less fortunate.
Florcy Eves Chavans Versailles was born in Cape Haiti and lived in multiple places before visiting Boston for a week-long vacation that started in 1978 and ended in 2020. She loved Boston. Florcy was a powerful activist. She was instrumental in protests for the Tent City Apartments housing complex, a complex named for the protests that began on the site 20 years before it was built. She volunteered at Rosie's Place and Women's Lunch Place for over 20 years, in many capacities, helping women who were in dire circumstances. Her activism lives on in her son, DJ.
Blanche Barrimore was raised on a farm in western Oklahoma, along the red dirt roads against a backdrop of nature's symphony. Her formative years were spent picking cotton, milking cows, singing in church, and interacting with her large family. As a published author, her remarkable short stories and poems about growing up in Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl provide an essential insight into that time in history. Her books will be entered into the Oklahoma Historical Society archives.
Barbara Korn from Pittsfield was a loving mom to her daughters. She helped raise her grandchild when her daughters went to work. Barbara loved nature, camping, the Red Sox, and volunteer work. She helped start the Mitten Tree at her church and was a Sunday school teacher.
Todd A. Dickey, 53, of Worcester, was a loving father to his daughter and best friend to his wife of 28 years, Jane. Todd was a gentle giant. He worked for years in social services, helping teens transition from residential programs to society. A fierce competitor on the football field, Todd was active most of his life in the Worcester Youth Football Program. One of the proudest days of his life was when he received the prestigious John Hannah Award at the New England Patriots Summer Training Camp from the Patriots Hall of Famer as a high school student.
Giada Gigi Rodriguez, 13 years old, of Holyoke. Is remembered for her beaming smile and contagious laughter. Her aunt said Gigi was an old soul. She loved music, sang beautifully. She was bougie, excuse me, I'm not hip. She liked fashion. She was very intelligent, book smart, but a deep thinker. Gigi is missed by everyone lucky enough to know her.
Patricia Peland of Arlington was a kind and gentle soul who loved animals, music, and art. Family and friends will forever miss her.
Kristin Marie Weyland, 30, of Sunderland, was a beautiful, ambitious young woman. She was thoughtful, caring, and humble, with a bright smile and blueberry eyes. She enjoyed hikes with her dog, gardening, cooking, baking, reading, and feeding birds. She was the office manager at Connecticut Valley Oral Surgeons in Amherst.
David and Muriel Cohen passed away hours apart in Longmeadow after almost 78 years of marriage. David served in the Army as a radio operator during World War II, where he was a liberator at the Ohrdruf concentration camp, a satellite camp of Buchenwald. After serving in the military, David became a history teacher. After retirement, he and Muriel moved to Longmeadow to be near their family. He spent the rest of his life speaking about his liberating experiences, teaching school children about the Holocaust and never to hate. During David's time in the military and liberation, he took many photographs, some of which are in the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C.
Muriel Cohen was married to David for 78 years. Muriel and David brought up their 2 daughters, Fran and Ellie, in Queens, New York. Muriel was the neighborhood go-to person in all emergencies. She loved taking care of her grandchildren more than anything and was selfless. Muriel and David leave 2 daughters, 6 grandchildren, 8 great-grandchildren, and an entire community of friends.
John Pope, 53, was a lifelong resident of Haydenville. He was an essential worker who worked as a certified nursing assistant at a nursing home in Northampton for more than a decade. John grew up across the street from the Williamsburg Fire Department, where he volunteered as a firefighter for 24 years. He loved Civil War history, cooking, sports, and the Beatles.
Jack Merrill lived in Plymouth, where he was a loving father and husband. He taught psychology at public high schools in the Boston area for over 30 years, where he impacted his students and the community.
Selma Pollock was a strong personality whose sometimes blunt manner never obscured her incredible generosity, kind heart, and devotion to family. She remembered and acknowledged every single birthday, anniversary, and special occasion in her and her husband's large extended family. She was a style icon, always gorgeously turned out and accessorized, and she remained amazingly beautiful, even bedridden, and without a stick of makeup at 90 years old.
Gail Whittle devoted her life to her community. She and her husband owned a unique shop in Templeton where employees and customers felt her genuine interest in their lives. The business, Country Mischief, thrived until Gail retired after 30 years and closed up the shop. Her love for her family was evident to everyone. She was so happy, looking forward to the new possibilities of free time. She died in April of 2020, within a short time of retiring.
Evan Alfonso Kutu of Freetown was 25 years old. Evan had a contagious smile and loved to be around people. He enjoyed going on walks, fishing, balls, and balloons. He especially enjoyed going to family parties.
Alan Klotz passionately loved life. Most people would miss both big and little things, such as the way light would fall on the side of a tree that would make his eyes light up. Alan would describe the trees in the park in May in blossom so accurately that you could smell them through the phone. Being around Alan, everything came to life all the more so. He was highly respected in the photography world and was a great teacher and writer, critic about the subject.
Pamela Bonza Bates was born in Greenfield. She was a wife and mother of 2 girls. Pamela was fascinated by sea turtles and loved her Yorkie Bella. She always had several sewing, knitting, or crochet projects in the works. She loved learning and graduated magna cum laude from college at 64. Pamela was a dedicated director of a program for people over 60 through her local council on aging. She was active in her church and had been a well-loved Girl Scout leader. She died the day after her 67th birthday in the hospital of COVID.
Charles Butch Reedy retired as a shipping supervisor from Commonwealth Packaging Corporation in Chicopee in 2009, but determined to be a lifelong learner and began his second act. He entered the Vet Tech program at Holyoke Community College, graduating in 2013. He was always willing to help neighbors, friends, and family with anything, but his favorite people were his grandchildren, who called him Pop Pop. Butch loved music, especially the blues, and spent many nights in Northampton venues listening to his favorite bands. Nothing made him happier than sharing that music with those he loved.
Clifton P Barnett, 44 years old, was born, raised, and educated in Stoughton. He was a resident of Natick since 2003. Clifton was the founder and owner of Big Daddy's Upholstery in Natick. He was a jack of all trades and a skilled handyman who was generous with his time and talents to family and friends. Clifton was a gifted grill master and baker who specialized in his smoked meats and chocolate cakes, which would be washed down with his homemade moonshine and rum punch. He enjoyed RV camping and, most of all, spending time with his wife and kids.
Elizabeth Betty Tower was born in Otis. She graduated from Lee High School before attending and graduating from Bay Path College's secretarial program. Betty was a volunteer for the Red Cross in Florence, Massachusetts, and a graduate of the Bells Gardens, California accounting program. Besides her children and stepchildren, she helped to raise her granddaughter and 3 great-grandchildren. Betty loved God and enjoyed church, volunteering, helping others, card games, board games, traveling, and spending time with family and friends.
Kurt Ryan of Gloucester was a sophomore in high school and 15 years old. He was a video gamer at heart. He knew everything about gaming and computers. He was fabulous with them, and he was top of his class in school. He was a truly kind, wildly funny, and lovable teenager. The hole left in the hearts of his friends and family is immeasurable.
Albert DiPietro was a Springfield native who attended American International College. After college, he served in Korea with the U.S. Army for 2 years before returning home to start his 35-year career with MassMutual. Al loved to make people happy by singing to them, and he did that anywhere, in grocery stores, restaurants, and nursing homes. He loved to make delicious Italian meals. He lived every day to its fullest and was a wonderful father, husband, and grandpa. He was always there for us, and we couldn't be there for him when he passed.
Enrique Garcia Dotra stayed busy with household projects and helping friends. He had a boat with his brothers in his youth, and they fished commercially. Enrique loved to fish recreationally. He was a great dad, a loyal friend, cherished brother, and an even more amazing Baba.
Jean Alexandra Jr. of Salem was 45 years old. Jean, or Jean, was born in Haiti. He was raised and educated in Salem. Gene the Dancing Machine was a brother, uncle, and friend. Gene was known for being the first to hit the dance floor and getting the party started. Gene was devoted to his family. Above all else, Gene adored and cherished his daughter. They loved to travel and explore everywhere, from Disney to Haiti. Despite living in New England, Gene was a loyal New York Jets fan who loved the notorious B.I.G. and Michael Jordan.
Alexander Torres of Auburn was 33 years old. Alex was born and raised in Worcester and attended Burncoat High School. He married the love of his life, Rosa, in 2011. They were together for 17 years. Together, they began their life in Worcester with their 4 children before purchasing their dream home in Auburn last year. Alex was a special person who enjoyed traveling, notably to Puerto Rico to see family, cruising the warmth and beauty of the Caribbean, music, and family dinners.
Michael Crowley, 62 years old, was born in Gardner. He attended Gardner schools before graduating from Assumption College. He served in the United States Army for 4 years. He taught GED prep at Worcester County House of Corrections before teaching English at Gardner High School for 20 years, retiring in 2018. Michael loved going to the Patriots games with his family for over 50 years. He was a fearless traveler and took many trips with his wife of 31 years and his daughters in the U.S. and abroad.
James Jim Edward Humphreys of Northampton, Massachusetts, was a retired professor emeritus in mathematics at UMass Amherst. Influenced by his expertise growing up as a gay man in the 1950s, Jim became an active leader, donor, and supporter of LGBTQ rights and organizations. He helped open his field to future generations by working to establish visible recognition for LGBTQ mathematicians through Spectra. Jim loved to listen to classical music, particularly Baroque.
Ronaldo Ponce, 65, of Worcester, left behind his wife Clara of 44 years, their 3 children and 3 grandchildren. He was born in El Salvador, where he graduated from college with a degree in education and taught for many years before becoming the school principal. In 1984, he sought asylum from his homeland and relocated to the United States. During these years, he worked numerous jobs before finally finding his way back to education and becoming a school custodian for the Worcester Public Schools, working at North High School. His grandchildren were the love of his life.
These are 50 of the 1,044,461 lives lost to COVID in the United States. We release their names and stories into our world to keep alive the memories of those we honor. All the people we know and all the people we never will, today and tomorrow, and for the rest of our lives, we remember. I'd now like to introduce Richard Richardson, the creator of Three Sisters Sanctuary, who'll speak about this event space and healing from grief and experiencing grief in this space.
I'm always moved when I see these many people here. It helps reward me as an artist to be able to share what I've created. Today, what I'm sharing with you all are healing gardens. You know, I started this 30 years ago to help heal the grief of the loss of my brother. And these gardens, when today is over with, they're always here for you folks. No matter what day or what time, they're meant for you to come and experience them, and hopefully a little bit of whatever you need to let go of, you can let go of before you enter into the gardens. And realize that they're here for everybody, all of your family members, the community. I'm very moved that the gardens have grown into what they are, and that the sanctuary is known for what it can do, and that it's called on an event like today to be here and to serve our community. So I'm just going to say, come anytime, you're always welcome. I'm not going to go into much more depth than this. My daughter would like to read, what is it called? Our mission statement. And thank you all. You know, come. I knew it was a mission statement. I was only fooling. Come on. That's called New Jersey humor. I get it.
My name is Sarah Winona. I'm the middle sister at Three Sisters Sanctuary, and I'm also deeply moved and appreciative to be part of today's event. Thank you. Three Sisters Sanctuary welcomes all to heal the heart, the body, and the mind through the merging of art and nature. This is a space in service to others to receive and disperse life's energies. Challenges, hurts, hardships are shared and lessened here. Its expansive arms of stone are born from the land of milk and honey. Its lungs breathe in winds that lift birds to flight and exhale sweet fragrances of flowers and marsh. Its blood pumps waters that have escaped winter's freezes and eluded winter's heat. We weren't so fortunate today, though. Its belly burns with fires, belching out long churning and sometimes forgotten passions. And its body of fauna and forest provide companionship that remind us all that though we may feel weary or tired, that we are never alone. So in that spirit, as my father said, we'd like to welcome all of you to return whenever your body, spirit, or mind needs it. And when you can't make the voyage, check out the website, or just remember moments like this by closing your eyes and breathing deeply. So thank you.
Thank you to Richard and Sarah, and I remind you that there is a dragon that they have created over here that you can go to burn your regrets. You could leave a memento of someone you've loved, connect with others in the community. Be sure to check out the resources of both Three Sisters Sanctuary and Marked by COVID out near the parking lot area, where there is some food and some refreshment. As we close today, I'd like you to allow space for the COVID bereaved to make their way out of the sanctuary first. And when we do follow them, please be mindful and stay on the paths of the sanctuary. And after we leave here today, consider making a contribution to the work that Marked by COVID is doing, as well as to the work of the Three Sisters Sanctuary. Thank you so much.
Is it far away? You sure?